Hey, everybody. This is Perch. By the way, some people have asked me this throughout the years, and they're asking me it now for obvious reasons based on the news. I get into sometimes a battle of pronouns, meaning, I will say he or she. I, I'm I the they them. That one I struggle with. I freely admit it. Not because of a political statement, but because it doesn't make any grammatical sense. Um, but it's the basic policy I have is that if somebody shows up and says, my name is whatever, and it is a changed name, it's a new name, somebody has transitioned, whatever else, I call him or her what they prefer. And it's not a sign of respect. It's quite frankly, it's a sign of laziness. This is how the person is. Fine. This is not the battle I want to run. Several people do not like that, and I'm getting quite a few of you. Well, not quite a few, but a couple dozen, probably writing in, going, I'm never listening to your channel again because you said her or Gretchen. Okay, I mean, if that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, then that's fine. This isn't for you, but I'm not going to get in and be like, well, if the person's nice, then I'll go ahead and say her, but if they were mean, then I'll say him or what. No, I just look. My policy is, you show up, you say this is me. So I'll call you by what you tell me your name is. I don't have the mental energy to get into I don't think that's really your name or any of that. It's not worth it to me to bother. So face value, that's what I do. Again, your mileage may vary. Totally fine. You be you. That's totally fine. But that's what I do. And so, again, if that's going to cause you not to listen to the channel, then, so be it. But it's really simplicity on my part. So, all right, here's this mail. Writing for trades. This is Dear Perch Perchington. First of his name, voice of the reason, slayer of Arby's, avoided by Snyder. Yeah. Enjoyer of K-pop and heir to the sitting throne. Yeah. I heard you and the other channels discuss how bad writing for trades is for the comic medium. I'd like to offer a different perspective. Maybe the problem isn't writing for trades, but releasing the stories in floppies. Okay. In German-speaking European countries, floppies are as good as dead. A lot of European countries. Almost everything gets released only through trades. At the time of this writing, only series still released as floppies are Batman, Justice League, Detective Comics, Avengers, Spider-Man, and Deadpool. Even though floppies are a better deal here than in the US, since we get 2 issues in one volume for around $5, Panini made it clear that it simply doesn't make economic sense to release more than the most popular characters in floppies. While this is a bad sign for the health of the superhero comics in Central Europe, I think it works really well with the stories being told. I've got no problem waiting 3 months for the next issue of Superman when I get an entire story that engages me for an hour or more. Maybe DC and Marvel should shift to releasing their stories mainly in trades, just like manga does with its tankobons. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and please bring back sales analysis. I really need to know how well or poorly the Krakoa era really performed. Greetings from Austria, and best wishes to you and your family. Should I ever come to the States, I'll have to try Arby's because your intense hatred for them is such a good commercial. Why? You're guaranteed food poisoning. God, I've got to try that. What's wrong with you? No. Austria is really nice, by the way. I haven't been in... when was the last time I was in Austria? 2019, I think. So, I'm overdue to go back. I have some good friends in Austria. Oh yeah, that will definitely make some jokes elsewhere. Anyway, I understand what you're saying in theory, and I think there are definitely stories that fit trades in how they're written and how they're produced and based on distribution. I mean, keep in mind, you take a place like Switzerland, for example, a lot of places in Europe where you have trades that are in hardcover, Panini, nice, trade dress, nicely put together. And they're sold in on bookshelves in grocery stores and other places like that. It just makes sense. Floppies, though, it would be difficult for the shop. I mean, we often talk about kind of where they go and how they're sold and everything else. But one other factor to all this is simply, it's it's challenging for workers who have a lot of logistics and things to do to go and every week put up and take off comic books from the shelf and deal with damage and all that. I mean, it's just one more bit of friction for a relatively low margin item. So it makes sense for a lot of locations to just stick to trades. And I think the trades that you think of I mean, you have your Tankobon trades that you've seen in stores that manga utilizes. You have trades that are kind of what U.S. audiences are used to, which are kind of softback things you might see in a bookstore or an airport or something. And then you have these hardcover, kind of larger format trades that Panini does. So you have different styles, and all of them have different um, different, better or worse ways to actually display and fit based on the store. The reality is, for good distribution, and yes, this does create complexity for the publishers, it'd be a good idea to have all those. The Tankobon style format for, a collection of comics is going to work really well in a lot of places. Um, and then there are also locations where floppies actually make sense. I think, to your other point, though, I guess there's a couple different ways to go with this. First of all, people are used to kind of watching, like a Netflix season on streaming, and then, waiting a year or more for the next season. So there, it's waiting 3 months for the next trade or something like that isn't the end of the world. It would actually, most audiences are comfortable with that. It's what they're used to. Um, but comics are also episodic storytelling too. So there's also a model where, every month having a part of the story works. I think, in terms of something that might work, I think copying, one of the things that Japan does is a good idea. Beyond just, I mean, the Tankobon's fine. It's just style format. But the idea of putting some of the story in a giant anthology or a giant kind of book where you've got like 10 stories in one, and it's sold for, it's on cheaper paper and everything else sold for a relatively cheap price. I think that's something the US needs to start experimenting with seriously. Marvel needs to put out the Spider-Man family of books. You got Amazing, and you have Spider-Man, and you have Venom, and you have a handful of Spider-Man related universe titles till you get to about 8 to 10, and you publish this book, basically this thicker, almost phone book like collection once every month or every 2 weeks or whatever. And then you do the Avengers family, you do the X-Men family, and then you collect them all in a higher quality trade. I think that's something that they need to try experimenting with fast, because the advantages to that is, number one, you're getting more exposure to your characters all in one. You're basically, that's worked really well for manga. Two, you can still publish at a pretty high frequency, meaning you can have books out every month, and so the shelf's always full. Three, your price point on your floppies has grown so much at this point that a lower cost kind of phone book like if anybody remembers the phone book, anyway, a lower cost Zine like that is, it's within people's budget. You could probably pull something like that off for $10 to $12 that has 8 to 10 comics in it printed, whereas each one of those comics is quickly going to be about $5 a piece in a premium floppy format. Purists, by the way, people who have been comic collectors listening to us right now will hate this idea, and I'm sure do hate this idea, no doubt. But that's where we're headed. And I think you've got to find different ways to get visibility, get products into stores, and it is time to start experimenting heavily with different formats. And I think this is one of them that worked really well in the 90s and 2000s in Japan. It helped bridge the gap to digital when they went there, and it was a successful format. Yeah, it meant that people were sometimes buying these collections with stories they didn't like, but the price was low enough that it didn't really matter. And it functioned and it worked. So I think it's time to do that. I should do a video where I really explain this, but hopefully you can kind of picture in your mind what I'm describing. One other aspect to all this, by the way, is the cost of doing floppies in newsprint or cheaper paper. People have talked about, could this bring down costs? And the answer is not much. I do know, Alternative will mess with that. We'll see other companies do it from time to time, but as a holistic line, like thinking all of Marvel's comics, you will bring down the cost, not as much as you think. You're also bringing down the margin. So retailers aren't exactly going to love that, because keep in mind, a lower price point, even though you have lower cost of goods, it actually eats into what the retailers take. So they're going to love the idea. I'll just put it that way. So you're taking money out of the chain, which is probably also a video at some point I should do. Anyway, thank you very much for the mail. Great question. And what kind of trade formats do you want to see? I think the writing style does play a big factor here for sure. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thanks for listening.